Nunu is the troll champion of League of Legends, which is a real shame for Trundle. Nunu is actually the small boy that rides around on the Yeti, just like how a Yuumi player sits AFK on their carries. They both pretend they're helping, but where would they be without their Yeti? I have found the player who practically invented Nunu mid. He used it to climb to Challenger, and is now seriously playing full AP, Ghost, Cleanse, Disco Nunu, and still climbing. This guy is using a trolling strategy against Korean pros, and actually winning games at the highest ranks. So I've been climbing a ton recently, hitting a new peak rank of Diamond 2 77 LP. I would not know the best champions, builds, or runes without using u.gg, and I really recommend it for anyone trying to climb. I'm lucky enough to say that they are also sponsoring today's video. A Riot employee recently said u.gg's data is the closest to their own. Now the site with the best data for builds and tier lists also has the best profiles. It's the first site to track your LP per game. Even Riot's own client doesn't have this feature. Search your summoner name on u.gg and see not just your LP, but also your division rank ups and promo series wins. Let's just hope Nunu mid doesn't get me demoted. Want to show off a hard carry game or a new rank up? You can pin a match to the top, plus other features like setting a skin background when you create a free account. u.gg has my favourite champ select search. Copy paste your lobby into the search bar, see a really compact view with a ton of information. Who's on their main champion or autofilled, who's on a lost streak, the player's best and worst champions, and even their recent matches with KDAs to see if they're inting. Definitely dodge this HappyChimeNoises guy if he picks Lilia top, he has a 0% win rate on it. Click the link in the description to see the new features and try it out for free. Back to Nunu. Our player today is named Hawoo. I had a conversation with him about Nunu mid, and let me give you a quote. "Nunu is my life. If Nunu dies, I'll die." His story began in Season 8. He did start playing the game years earlier, but let's skip to the good stuff. Season 8, patch 8.17, the Nunu rework was released. This patch turned Nunu from a very simple, invading, mainly macro-based champion into a slightly more difficult ganking jungler. Our player, Lee, at this time was actually playing Lee Sin. He had climbed up to Korean Master as a one-trick jungler, taking on players like Canyon and Showmaker from Damwon, and winning. With Nunu being a new jungler, Lee thought he would give him a try. He loved the snowball mechanic, and now finally had a fun, tanky jungler to play alongside his Lee Sin. He became a two-trick, adding Nunu to his most played. In this first season of Nunu's release, Lee Hawoo hit Challenger with Nunu jungle. Season 10 he started playing even more Nunu, with his plan staying the same. Keep using his crazy jungle skill, keep beating these noob LCK players, climbing quickly back to Challenger, right? Well, at that time, Nunu started to struggle. Against meta junglers, he found it hard to get the same advantages he could get in Season 9. Lee looked for a solution. Maybe moving out of jungle would help. He tested Nunu top, Nunu support, but it wasn't working. His only remaining option was mid lane, and once he tried it, he never went back. After spending a ton of time developing very specific strategies to make Nunu mid work, he took it to ranked. This season he became the Nunu mid player, having some quite famous games, laning against Faker and solo killing him, which then actually inspired Faker to pick Nunu mid, which led to some very funny clips. Lee kept climbing right back to Challenger through all these pro players, reaching rank 22 on the Korean ladder. Season 11 is when the story goes off the rails. While he was streaming, he was asked so many times about Nunu mid and the people trolling games with it, running it down in the classic Disco Nunu style. Disco Nunu is a style that many people credit to P-Star Zillion many seasons ago. Back then, players like him would pick Nunu with clarity and clairvoyance, ready to troll games if teammates refused to dodge. It was called Disco because they would spam these colourful summoner spells and just dance rather than trying to win. Lee had an idea. What if he tried to show people that Disco Nunu was a legitimate strategy that could get a player to Challenger, just the same as mid Nunu? He made a new account named Blue-Eyed Nunu and began to climb. With the old summoner spells removed, modern Disco Nunu now takes Ghost and Cleanse, so of course Lee had to take these every single game, no flash. As you can imagine, this account is hell for him to play on, struggling to get into a single game after queuing for hours, because of constant dodges. Let me show you why this trolling Nunu playstyle is not actually that troll. So Ghost and Cleanse. Yes, this is a trolling build, but these summoners are actually useful for Nunu. Cleanse is a common mid summoner spell against hard CC, like Twisted Fate or Lissandra. Nunu is an immobile champion without any dashes, so Cleanse keeps him alive if he ever makes a positioning mistake, or if he's playing against a ton of CC. Cleanse also counters Ignite, removing it instantly, letting him get some surprising kills. Ghost makes him more mobile in fights, and makes his snowball faster, thus more surprising to enemies. Ghost also actually extends the range of his snowball by a decent amount to extend your ganking range. His mid Nunu build is also very special. He is going for full AP Nunu, as it lets him carry much better than jungle. If you get fed, you can even pentakill enemies alone. He has two mythic options. The first is Everfrost. Everfrost on AP Nunu lets him pull off quite a ridiculous combo. He uses Everfrost on an enemy, locking them in place to land his E root. Once an enemy is tagged by his E, E, they'll always be rooted if they stay in the zone, so Lee starts full channeling his ultimate. Now enemies think they have time to escape, but then Nunu E activates, rooting them and guaranteeing Nunu does full damage with his ultimate, pretty much one-shotting any squishy champion in the game. This is the combo you should be using whenever you're in a 1 vs 1. It's a very uncommon combo because AP Nunu is very uncommon, so enemies will not know how to escape. His other mythic option is Hextech Rocket Belt. This mythic helps Nunu with his lack of mobility, giving him the dash he really needs when building AP. He can also use it to extend his damage slightly to finish off kills. Nunu starts with a crazy strategy, invading with Snowball. Nunu's invades are very explosive, fast, and unexpected because of the speed everyone gets out of base at the start of the game. He hits 700 movement speed. He can get to enemies before they set up any kind of defense. He has a couple of routes that he uses. The first is this blue side invade. He starts in this bush, using W before 30 seconds to ensure the bonus speed doesn't run out. This spot lets him make it all the way through the river, curve round into the buff, and hit anyone in his path. It can also be adapted to hit someone in the river, or in this lower bush. Here is a map of all the areas this invade covers, showing you how you can swap if you see an enemy. The same can be done from bot side, same invade, same options. For red side you can do this invade, which goes even further, through the river, around red, with the ability to hit any of these bushes and catch any enemy that is standing near them. You can also do this alternative route with a different start, that lets you get through the red bush and the one behind, guaranteeing you'll hit anyone in these common spots. Your AoE knocks up multiple enemies, and does lots of damage, setting up free kills. It is important to tell your teammates that you're doing an invade, and ping them to position like he does in this clip. If Nunu doesn't have follow-up, he is stuck in the enemy jungle with no escape, truly running it down like a normal disco Nunu. Even when the lane starts, Nunu mid is very unique. At level 1, Lee does something weird. Starting behind his tower, he begins a snowball. His goal is to land this fully on the backline minions, and explode it to one-shot them. As a melee champion, you would struggle to push this wave normally and get any CS, but as mid Nunu, you instantly get a 3 minion advantage, which will always push in. He then kills the melee minions and moves out of vision. This level 1 is insanely good for 2 reasons. It shoves the wave, meaning the enemy mid has to either fully tank the minion damage to avoid hitting their tower, or they have to let it hit the tower and then struggle to last hit. It also gives Nunu instant priority, meaning he can always get the chance to roam first to a fight. If he has no gank options, he starts another snowball, back to mid, to the next wave, again killing the backline instantly. He gets level 2 and then pushes in with his Q. Another wave pushed into the enemy tower, then he moves back into river, and has another chance to roam. Here, enemies often ward deep in the lane to try and track where Nunu is going, so our Nunu even starts Sweeper to counter this, clearing the ward and making sure he is pressuring all of the lanes at once, playing like a twisted fate, ready to ult. You might think the counter to this is just for the enemy to block the snowball and deny him. If this happens, Lee doesn't mind. Snowball, even at level 1, does a ton of damage, because he's rolling it from so far away. He takes the good trade, waiting for the cooldown, and just tries again. If you're landing these snowballs over and over again, the enemy mid is going to die. Level 3, Nunu takes his E. He is now ready to start focusing on roaming. He's not the kind of champion that wins mid lane. Much like many of the OP solo queue champions, he cares more about how many times he can visit top, bot, or jungle fights. Playing like a second jungler who moves into river, starting a snowball in the center, ganking, trying to get a kill, then moving back to mid, snowballing to kill the wave, and repeating. This playstyle, when done correctly, is so annoying to play against. The enemy mid is always forced to stay with their wave. The enemy top and bot lane are under pressure always, and the enemy jungler can't even invade because Nunu will get there first. Having a scuttle crab here is really useful. The extra movement speed is great. Just like Ghost, it extends the range of snowball, which is important for any gank. When you're back in lane, use your Q to make sure you're always on full health. Nunu Q has a 90% AP scaling on minions, so this skill is really good for sustain. He even maxes Q first, which makes his healing and the damage much higher. Nunu never really wants to fight in mid lane, so he doesn't really need Flash or Ignite to outplay someone. As a disclaimer, Hawoo says this playstyle should not be played by anyone who has not already hit Challenger with Nunu mid, with normal summoner spells. Riot, please don't ban me, I put the sentence in the video, now you can't blame me for anything. It's not my fault if this is in your games. Now back to teaching you how to play it. Level 6, Nunu gets ult. With a high base damage and a 250% AP scaling on top of that, you can immediately start killing people. The damage on this ability is so stupidly high because it's so hard to land, but thanks to the Everfrost combo from earlier, he now has a way to land it much more consistently. In mid game, Lee starts to look for 1v1s around the map. With his chain CC combo, he can beat anyone. In teamfights, Lee has one huge priority, surprising enemies with a bush camp. This is the classic strategy of a Nunu in a teamfight, but AP Nunu turns it into an actual 1v5 fight-winning strategy. The most important thing to remember is, you need to stay hidden. If you show that you're even around the fight at any point, enemies will begin to think about the possibility of a Nunu engage, so they will predict that you're going to ult. You have a sweeper from level 1, so check the bush you're in. If it's clear, then wait and start preparing. Predicting enemies is the hardest part of this strategy. You need them to completely forget Nunu is in the fight, and also walk into an area that you can affect. Most most of the successful ults that Lee does are either way before a fight starts, as enemies are split up, moving into position for an objective, or they are near the end of the fight, where he's been hidden the whole time, so enemies are running around trying to finish off the fight, then suddenly get 100-0'd by a single ability. AP Nunu is so good because he can win a game with the strategy at any time, no matter how behind your team is. Even in a challenger game, Lee has countless fights that he's won solo, and so many pentakills. One version of this play that I've not seen before is using your ult over a wall to hit enemies. If Nunu is out of vision, his ult is always invisible. Nunu ult is always also a circle around him, so Lee stands right next to a wall. He's predicting an enemy will walk through Fog of War right next to him. This is much easier if you have a ward over the wall, but either way, the enemies will see absolutely nothing, no circle, and no indication they're about to die. They can see that they're being slowed, but that's very hard to notice if you're rotating from one lane to another. Once you hit late game, Nunu has a ton of damage, but also a ton of speed. Lee's strategy now is using the huge range of his snowball to find engages. He can start way back in the jungle and make it into the enemy base. This is a great way to catch enemies off guard, starting a fight before they're ready for one. Most champions in the game need to run onto vision near the enemies, showing they're about to engage, which lets the enemies respond. Nunu comes sprinting into your base with a huge snowball that will guarantee your death if you don't flash it. Late game, Nunu is the most immobile compared to enemies, so you should just do a simple snowball engage, then walk away to let your team finish off kills. Move in and out at a safe distance to help with damage, then run in once safety is guaranteed and you've won the fight. Here's a couple of extra challenger Nunu tips. When ganking, since you've charged up your snowball from the river, the snowball is wide enough to hit enemies through the tower. If enemies are hugging it trying to avoid a dive, just snowball right at the tower, and then the hitbox is big enough for the damage and CC to still go through. When you're in danger, the shielding on your ult is vital. You should time the health you get from your Q and the shield you get from your ultimate to bait enemies in, trapping them inside your ultimate zone to win a fight. These are necessary for Nunu to stay alive. He's very squishy with this AP build, so these abilities act like a barrier. Our player bans Silas every game. Silas is the counter to one-shot assassins, as he can heal out of their damage range using his W. He also has easy CC to cancel Nunu ultimate, so he's a great ban. Enemies that have lots of slows are very hard to deal with as Nunu, stuff like Anivia, Cassiopeia, or Lux. Your cleanse is great against their hard CC, but these champions can deny zones of the fight with uncleansable CC, trapping Nunu in without a flash. The good matchups for Nunu are champions with lower wave clear, like Katarina or Kassadin, where Nunu can shove them in repeatedly, with no chance of them following your roam. Nunu's immobility is his biggest weakness, so a bad Nunu will get caught out often. Jungle Nunu takes phase rush to give him a way out of fights once he's engaged, but mid Nunu can only really go in. If he lands a snowball and his ult, then he will get a kill, but if he misses snowball or gets ult interrupted by CC, then he is stuck in a fight with no way out. When Lee is looking for 1v1 picks, he goes for champions without much CC, or waits for their C to be down before he ults. Picking a lot of low cooldown CC against Nunu is a great way to beat him, and if you're playing against a Nautilus, Malzahar, Fiddlesticks, Jhin, and Renekton team comp, please dodge that game. If you want to try this style out, Lee recommends Ignite Flash rather than this special version of the build. Flash is great on Nunu, letting him always have an escape option, and Ignite helps him get more kills in lane if enemies ever get hit by a snowball. For his build, start Doran's Ring, Pots, and a Sweeper. First item, I recommend Everfrost for the root into ult combo and the mana it gives. If you are confident your jungler will give you a blue buff, then Rocket Belt is better for mobility. And yeah, junglers never do that, so go for Everfrost. For his boots, he says, shoes, must wear the wizard shoes no matter what. I love Google Translate. After this, he loves Medjai's Soul Stealer. Nunu is a spam ganker, and it's quite obvious he wants to snowball. Next is Void Staff to start doing true damage, into Zhonya's for more safety, and finally Horizon's Focus. For his special runes, he takes Dark Harvest. This rune is important for AP assassins, as once you get a couple of kills, your damage keeps ramping up until you're one-shotting everyone. It also extends Nunu's damage, making sure he can finish off enemies. He takes Stacking Minor runes, again showing his focus on early and mid game. Secondaries are Nimbus Cloak for more mobility, again Nunu is an immobile champion so the movement speed helps, and Water Walking because this guy spends more time in the river than a River Shen. Leave a comment if you think you would still dodge this guy on his challenger Ghost Cleanse Nunu, or if this video has made you finally trust him. Please check out Lee's YouTube and Twitch where he streams these Disco Nunu games, and thanks so much for watching.